The family vacation started like a bad dream. Mark's parents, Richard and Susan, practically insisted I was persona non grata at their table. The entire trip unfolded in a silent, icy bubble around me. When I finally brought it up to Mark, hoping for some support, he just shrugged it off with, "That's just them." A tight smile stretched across my face. "Perfect," I managed, "I have my own ways too." The next morning, the atmosphere shifted drastically. They were in a panic once they found out what I'd done. Looking back, I could see the subtle digs, the dismissive glances, the feeling of being an afterthought, even in my own marriage. I chose to ignore them, blinded, I suppose, by love for Mark. I foolishly believed that with enough patience and effort on my part, things would somehow improve. They didn't. Instead, what should have been a fun, relaxing escape to Hilton Head, South Carolina, became a defining moment, etched forever in my memory. We arrived at the resort, and it was stunning, ripped straight from the pages of a travel magazine. White sand stretching as far as I could see, swaying palm trees, and the soothing rhythm of the ocean waves. For a fleeting moment, I actually felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this trip would be different. Maybe Richard and Susan would finally accept me, and we could share laughter, create some kind of genuine family connection. I was so naive. That first evening, we went to dinner at a beautiful restaurant. The waiter led us to a long, elegantly set table, perfect for our group. As I instinctively moved to sit next to Mark, Richard's voice cut through the air. "Oh, there must be some mistake," he said, shaking his head as if I was some sort of inconvenience. "She'll need her own table." I blinked, convinced I'd misheard him. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Susan didn't even bother to look up from her menu. "It's just how we do things," she stated flatly. I turned to Mark, pleading with my eyes for him to intervene, to tell them this was absurd, that I was his wife, not some random acquaintance. Instead, he just sighed, a sound heavy with resignation, and repeated, "It's just their way." Their way, and so, I sat alone, at a separate table. In retrospect, I should have packed my bags and left that very instant. But I didn't. I stayed, clinging to the faint, ridiculous hope that maybe it was just some bizarre tradition, a one-time occurrence. It wasn't. I woke up before dawn the next morning, actually looking forward to breakfast. I hurried down to the hotel restaurant, picturing them all waiting, ready to start the day together. But the large, empty space echoed back at me. I sent Mark a text, nothing. After wandering around for what felt like forever, probably close to 30 minutes, I finally found them. They were already seated at a huge table, halfway through their meal, laughing and talking, completely engrossed in their own little world. It was as if I didn't exist. Confused, I walked over. "Why didn't anyone tell me you were coming down?" Richard barely acknowledged me. "We figured you'd find us." Susan just took a sip of her coffee. "It's just how we do things." I looked at Mark, hoping for some kind of explanation, some sign of understanding. He was already eating, totally unfazed, acting like this was completely normal behavior. In that moment, a cold certainty settled over me, I wasn't part of their family. I never had been. And Mark, despite my hopes, wasn't on my side. The rest of the trip unfolded in a similar, isolating pattern. At every meal, I ended up eating alone. They conveniently forgot to include me in any group activity. They went on a private boat tour, which I only found out about when I saw the photos plastered all over Instagram. A fancy wine tasting became apparent only when I walked past them in the lobby, dressed to the nines and heading out the door. Later, I finally confronted Mark. "You could have at least texted me," I said, struggling to keep the anger out of my voice. He just sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "It's just their way." That became his default, his only explanation. By the fourth day, I'd had enough. I stopped trying to reach out. I stopped asking questions. If they wanted me to be invisible, then fine. I could do invisible. But they were about to discover that I had a way of doing things too. That night, while they were out drinking and celebrating their perfect, exclusive family vacation, I went back to the hotel room and started making my own plans. I wasn't just going to be sitting at a separate table anymore. The thought of simply disappearing, of letting them truly feel the consequences of their actions, fueled me. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I navigated to my email, pulled up those confirmation numbers, and got to work. After all, I had orchestrated everything: the hotel under my name, the rental car charged to my credit card, the dinner reservations neatly secured in my account. And Susan's precious spa day, the one she'd been practically vibrating with anticipation for. Oh, I had my claws into that one too. Methodically, one by one, I dismantled their meticulously planned escape. I erased them from the map of leisure. Their rooms vanished. Their rental car, poof, gone. That ridiculously overpriced dinner at the waterfront restaurant. Not on my watch. I even mustered a disturbingly polite tone to inform the spa that Susan wouldn't be gracing them with her presence. Then, I packed my bags, slid behind the wheel of my rental car, and simply left. While they were probably raising their glasses, those smug grins plastered on their faces, toasting to the perfect, carefree vacation they envisioned, I was already swallowing miles of highway towards Charleston. There, I checked into a lavish suite, the kind with crisp, high thread count sheets, and immediately ordered room service. I settled onto the balcony, the salty air kissing my skin, and watched the endless rhythm of the ocean. A profound sense of peace, something I hadn't felt in weeks, settled over me. Meanwhile, back in Hilton Head, I knew the first tremors of panic were beginning to surface. I woke up in Charleston feeling reborn. The gentle ocean breeze danced through the sheer curtains of my hotel room as I cradled a steaming mug of coffee. Stretched out on a plush lounge chair, I lost myself in the mesmerizing dance of the waves. Then, the insistent vibration of my phone shattered the serenity. Mark. I ignored it. Then Susan. Then Mark again. Then Richard. With a quiet satisfaction, I silenced my phone and smiled. The silence confirmed that they had finally noticed. I painted a vivid picture in my mind: Richard, stumbling out of bed, still blurry with sleep, only to be confronted by a starched hotel manager at the door. "Sir, there appears to be a complication with your reservation." Susan, mid-stretch, reaching for her phone, ready to consult the day's meticulously planned itinerary, only to be greeted by a cascade of cancellation notices. Mark, rubbing his temples, still half asleep and confused, listening to his mother's voice escalating from mild annoyance to a full-blown shriek. No rooms, no car, no meticulously crafted itinerary. Just, nothing. I savored the image, the taste of victory sweet on my tongue as I took another sip of my coffee. A few hours crawled by, and the silence in my hotel room began to grate on me. Boredom finally pushed me to check my phone. 3 messages, all from Mark. "Where are you? What the hell is going on? You need to fix this now." Honestly, the sheer audacity of it amused me. I decided to answer his next call, purely for the entertainment value. The second I picked up, he exploded. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Charleston," I replied, keeping my tone light. A pause stretched between us. "Charleston? What the hell are you doing there?" "Enjoying my..." I let the sentence hang, savoring the moment. I could hear muffled chaos in the background, Susan's shrill voice, no doubt berating some poor hotel employee, and Richard's frustrated muttering. "You cancelled everything?" Mark finally asked, his voice noticeably lower now, almost disbelieving. "Yes," I confirmed. He drew a sharp, audible breath. "Do you have any idea what you've done? My parents have nowhere to stay. We had plans. You left us stranded." "Oh no," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "That must be so uncomfortable." I knew he recognized his own words echoing back at him. I continued, you all wanted me to be separate, so I gave you exactly what you wanted. I actually laughed out loud. No, Mark. I really don't. And with that, I ended the call. Later, I heard snippets of the fallout. Apparently, the hotel was completely booked, leaving them scrambling for alternative accommodations. They ended up squeezed into some seedy roadside motel, a good 20-minute drive from the resort. The kind of place with flickering neon signs and a faint smell of stale cigarettes. Without a rental car, they were forced to rely on Ubers, but Hilton Head isn't exactly overflowing with ride-share drivers. Surge pricing, I imagined, must have been brutal. And Richard's prized fancy dinner, the one he'd been boasting about for weeks. Fully booked, of course. They were relegated to a tacky tourist trap filled with screaming children and questionable seafood. And Susan, well, she apparently threw a colossal hissy fit at the spa when she discovered her reservation was gone. She demanded they squeeze her in anyway. The thought of it all brought a genuine smile to my face. Justice, however small, had been served. The silence that followed my departure wasn't mine to hear directly. I pieced it all together later, from the furious barrage of texts Mark sent. Mark, seriously? You just bailed on us like that, followed by, Mark, Mom is absolutely livid. She was completely humiliated at the spa. Then, Mark, Dad is beyond angry about the restaurant. And finally, the one that confirmed I'd struck a nerve, Mark, I hope you're happy. I was, actually. Naively, perhaps, I imagined this would be the extent of it for them, a minor inconvenience, a small dose of the medicine they so readily dispensed. I thought I was just evening the score. But then, something far more significant unfolded. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. Not Mark this time. It was Sarah, Mark's cousin. Sarah, hey, just wanted to say I heard what happened, and honestly, good for you. I frowned, suspicion prickling at the back of my mind. Sarah and I had always been friendly, but she wasn't someone I confided in. Me, wait, what do you mean, good for me? Her response hit me like a physical blow. Sarah, they did the exact same thing to Mark's ex-wife. I sat bolt upright, the blood draining from my face. Mark's ex-wife? He'd always portrayed their divorce as a mutual, amicable drifting apart. He'd described it as a situation where they had simply outgrown each other, with no particular drama involved. I'd accepted his explanation without question. Now, however. Me, what exactly are you saying? Sarah continued, she went on a family vacation with them. They treated her abominably the entire time. Sat her at a separate table, completely ignored her, acted as if she were invisible. She left halfway through, and filed for divorce within a month of getting back. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of dread and disbelief. Sarah, I never mentioned it before because I assumed you knew. But seeing what they put you through, I realized he clearly never told you, did he? No. He hadn't. And if he had confided in me, if he'd offered me even a hint of warning, I would never have agreed to this trip. If he had, I would have understood that this wasn't just some quirky, family dynamic. This was a calculated pattern of behavior. And Mark, he had been fully aware of what was happening and he had chosen to say nothing. That night, Mark called again, his tone carefully controlled. This time, I answered. The carefully constructed facade had crumbled, and all I felt was anger, directed at him. I wanted to hear him explain. You need to fix this, Mark said, his voice a tense whisper, thick with barely suppressed annoyance. I cut him off before he could continue his protestations. No, you're the one who doesn't understand. It wasn't about tradition, and you know it. It was about them trying to manipulate me, exert their control. And you let them. You knew this was coming, didn't you? Silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Then, his voice betrayed him. Who told you that? Bingo. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. So, I wasn't the first, was I? More silence. Finally, a sigh, burdened with what I assumed was feigned regret. Look, Mark said, my parents can be a little intense, but they mean well. Mark, they don't see me as a person, let alone someone you love. The hesitation that followed spoke volumes. It confirmed what I already suspected, he wasn't going to stand up for me. He never had. Just come back, he pleaded, the words sounding hollow, devoid of any real conviction. Let's work this out. I turned away from him, gazing out at the expanse of the ocean, watching the tireless waves as they crashed against the shore. The rhythm was almost hypnotic, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. No, I replied, my voice surprisingly firm, a beacon in the surrounding storm. I think I'm already done. And with that, I disconnected the call. After ending the call with Mark, I continued to stare at my phone, a maelstrom raging in my mind. Mark had known. He had witnessed all of this before, and yet, he had allowed me to walk blindly into the same trap. It wasn't just anger I was feeling, it was profound disappointment. Disappointment with him, but perhaps even more with myself for allowing myself to be so naive. I poured myself another glass of wine, settling back into my lounge chair, and tried to salvage what was left of my evening. But a nagging feeling persisted, a sense that the truth was far more complex and damaging than I wanted to admit. If he had deceived me about his ex-wife, what other secrets was he hiding? A newfound resolve took root. I needed to know the extent of his lies. I picked up my phone again, opened Facebook, and searched for her name, Rachel. Mark's ex-wife. It was a step I should have taken a long time ago. I had never considered looking her up before, but now, I desperately needed answers, even if they were answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Her profile was locked down tight, but I stubbornly poked around, scanning our mutual friends, hoping one of them might be willing to spill the beans. Then I spotted her sister, Lauren, and thankfully, her posts were public. I clicked on something from a couple of years back, right after Rachel and Mark's breakup. Never let a man's family destroy you. Never let them convince you that you're less than you are. My sister deserved better. We all tried to warn her. Never again. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I scrolled further and found an old comment from Sarah, Mark's cousin, the same one who'd messaged me. I wish she had listened to us. At least she's free now. Listen to them, the words echoed in my head. I sat there, my heart hammering against my ribs, completely frozen. I debated messaging Lauren. Asking her to tell me the truth, the real story. But was I truly prepared for what she might say? I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, a million thoughts racing through my mind. Finally, I forced myself to take a long, shaky breath and typed, hey, this is going to sound completely out of the blue, but I think we need to talk. The response came back almost instantly. Lauren, I was wondering when you'd reach out. That single line felt like a physical blow. So, you know who I am. I typed, my fingers trembling slightly. Lauren, yeah. We've been waiting for this to happen. I froze, staring at the words on the screen. The implications hung heavy in the digital air. What do you mean? Lauren, Rachel wasn't the first, you know. And she sure wasn't the last. My breath hitched in my throat. What are you saying? Lauren, I'm saying Mark has done this before. More than once. His parents have done this before. More than once. And if you're talking to me right now, I'm guessing you just went through it too. A wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't just a fleeting mistake, a one-time incident. This was a pattern. A long, ugly history. It was always a game for them, a cruel little ritual performed on every woman Mark brought home. They never considered us real, genuine family, just hurdles to overcome. And Mark? He stood back and watched it unfold, every single time. Why didn't anyone warn me? I'd asked, the question a raw, desperate plea. We tried, Lauren had said, her voice laced with a weary kind of understanding. But Mark makes sure you're kept separate. He tells his girlfriends the family just has peculiarities, or traditions, anything to keep you from digging too deep. Did he ever tell you Rachel was the problem? My eyes squeezed shut, a wave of nauseating recognition washing over me. He had. He'd carefully crafted this narrative of Rachel as difficult, as someone incapable of understanding his family, always blowing things out of proportion. But now I knew the truth. Rachel wasn't dramatic. She had been suffocating. And I'd been following in her footsteps, or at least, I had been. Sleep was impossible that night. The sheer waste of the last few years, all poured into this charade, burned like acid in my chest. But there was something else tugging at me, a nagging feeling I couldn't quite name. Why the barrage of calls from Mark today? Why this sudden desperation? The answer slammed into me at 6 a.m., delivered in a stark, impersonal text from an unknown number. Ma'am, this is Officer Daniels with the Hilton Head Police Department. We need to speak with you regarding a missing persons report filed by your husband. I practically leapt out of bed, my phone nearly flying across the room. Missing person? My fingers fumbled with the phone as I frantically dialed the number back, my thoughts a chaotic jumble. The moment the officer answered, the words tumbled out of me in a rush. I'm fine. I'm not missing. A beat of silence. Then, ma'am, are you saying you left voluntarily? Yes. Of course, I left voluntarily. Isn't that obvious? Mark knows exactly where I am, I'm sure of it. My phone's been blowing up with his calls. The officer's sigh was audible. Your husband reported you left without saying anything, and that you're not answering his calls. He said he's worried about your safety. My jaw tightened involuntarily, the pressure aching in my molars. It wasn't concern. I knew it. It was about him needing to know, needing to control. Mark wasn't thinking of me at all. He was trying to bully me back. I took a long, deliberate breath. Officer, I'm fine. Really. I'm in Charleston. I chose to leave Hilton Head. I'm not missing, and I absolutely do not want him contacting me. There was a brief hesitation on the officer's part. Would you like to file a formal request for no further contact? I considered it for a moment, the implications sinking in. Then, I let out the breath I'd been holding. Yes. Please. I would. And with that single word, I made the first official move toward ending our marriage, filing for divorce. It felt both terrifying and liberating. Less than an hour later, my phone vibrated with a text message. This time it was Susan, Mark's sister. Susan, I can't believe you'd humiliate us like this. I actually laughed. It was almost comical. I ignored the text. But then another one arrived immediately. Susan, you made Mark involve the police. Do you have any idea how this looks for him? I made him. I rolled my eyes and took another sip of my lukewarm coffee. The messages kept coming, relentless. Susan, this family has done nothing but try to welcome you. Susan, you're being incredibly selfish. Susan, you need to come back and fix this. And then, the one that stopped me cold, Susan, if you don't come back, Mark is going to make things very difficult for you. I froze. It wasn't a suggestion or a plea. It was a flat-out threat, barely veiled. I leaned back in my chair, rereading the words on the screen, the weight of them pressing down on me. I used to think it was just about dominance, their messed up family dynamics playing out at my expense. But then it hit me, this was much more sinister. They weren't just trying to embarrass me, they were trying to dismantle me, piece by piece. And if I didn't act decisively, Mark would ensure their success. Susan's text message burned into my mind, if you don't come back, Mark is going to make things very difficult for you. It wasn't a threat, it was a guarantee. I could feel the subtle shift in their tactics. This wasn't just cold indifference, this was a declaration of war. And they expected me to surrender without a fight. Not a chance. I cracked my knuckles, took a deep breath, and typed a short reply, perfect. Let's make things difficult then. Immediately afterward, I booked a hotel conference room in Charleston and extended an invitation to everyone involved, Mark, his parents, and Sarah. If they wanted a conflict, I would bring it directly to their territory. The next morning, I found myself seated in the sterile conference room, anticipation building in the silence. The long wooden table was bare except for bottled water. It felt like an eternity before they arrived. The door burst open, and Mark charged in, his jaw so tense I wondered if his teeth would shatter. His parents followed closely behind, Susan's heels echoing sharply on the floor, Richard's face already flushed with anger. Sarah trailed behind, hesitant, her arms crossed defensively. She offered me a small nod, her expression unreadable. I had no idea if she was there as a witness, a mediator, or just to watch the spectacle unfold. I leaned back in my chair, trying to appear calm despite the adrenaline surging through my veins. Glad you could all make it, I said, my voice steady. Mark's voice was sharp. What the hell is this? I smiled, slow and deliberate. A conversation, he'd called it, a prelude to, what? You've been so eager to talk. So let's talk, Richard had sneered, his arms a rigid barrier across his chest. Did he really think I found this amusing? No, I said, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. I think it's pathetic. A cruel little performance you people put on, and you finally decided to use me as your prop. I saw Susan's eyes tighten, a familiar, unwelcome sign. You abandoned us, she spat. The absurdity of it made me laugh, a short, sharp sound. Oh, I abandoned you. That's quite a statement, coming from the people who perfected the art of pretending I was invisible for an entire vacation. I saw Mark's jaw clench and his hands grip the chair. You're blowing this out of proportion, he muttered. That was the breaking point. Something inside me snapped. I slammed my hands on the table, the force of it making Susan jump. I am your wife. My voice, though barely a whisper, seemed to fill the suddenly quiet room. Not a guest. Not some acquaintance you barely tolerate. Your wife. And you let her, treat me like I didn't exist. And you, I said to Mark, gesturing sharply, knew this wasn't some one-time oversight. You saw what was happening, and you allowed it to continue anyway. I saw the color drain from his face. Susan was quick to respond, her voice rising in pitch. We were just following tradition. It's not tradition. I said, my voice stronger this time. It's control. It's some twisted test, and you deliberately let every woman in your life fail it. Mark shook his head, denial etched onto his features. You're overreacting. Enough. I grabbed my phone, found Lauren's awful messages, and tossed it onto the table in front of him. Read it. He hesitated, as if the phone itself were contaminated. Read it, I repeated, my voice low and dangerous. Slowly, grudgingly, Mark picked it up and began to scroll. I watched as his face tightened, the guilt and realization dawning with each line of text. He threw the phone down as if it had burned him. This isn't proof of anything. Richard crossed his arms again, his expression implacable. You're raking up old dirt. It has nothing to do with us, or now. My anger flared again. I turned to Susan, my voice barely controlled. Is that right? Because last night, you sent me a message threatening me, implying dire consequences if I didn't. I couldn't even bring myself to say the words. He said if I didn't return, Mark would make things difficult for me. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Sarah's soft whistle echoed my own disbelief. I saw Mark's head snap toward his mother, his brow furrowed in a way I knew too well. You said what? He demanded. Susan visibly straightened, a defensive posture I recognized. I was just trying to make her understand, she started, but he cut her off, his voice rising. Understand what? That this is a game you've been playing for years? That you pulled the same stunt with Rachel? Richard shifted beside her, clearly uncomfortable. She shot him a silencing glare, but it was too late. I watched Mark's jaw tighten, a muscle ticking betrayingly. Then, I saw it, a hairline fracture in the wall of loyalty he'd so painstakingly built for his parents. It was the moment he understood the truth of what I'd been saying, the truth I had always known. He turned back to me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I held his gaze, my breath catching in my throat, waiting for him to finally say something real, something that acknowledged the hurt. But he just ran a hand through his hair and sighed, a sound that deflated me more than any shouting could have. I can fix this, he declared, and my stomach plummeted. That was his immediate reaction. Not an apology, not even a hint of regret, just the ingrained need to control the narrative, to smooth things over. I leaned back slightly, letting out a slow, controlled exhale. You really don't get it, do you? The silence that followed was deafening. I stood up, adjusting the strap of my bag on my shoulder. The gesture was small, but the weight of my decision felt immense. I'm not coming back, Mark. The words hung between us, sharp and final. It was like a switch flipped. Wait, what? He stammered, completely blindsided. I'm done, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. His eyes widened, and for a fleeting moment, I almost regretted the pain I knew I was causing. Almost. Are you serious? Sarah's snort echoed in the room. Honestly, I wondered how Mark hadn't seen it himself years ago. Susan's voice climbed a few registers. This is absurd. You're destroying everything because of nothing. I just shook my head, the weight of it all settling deep in my chest. No, Susan. You all destroyed it. You, Richard, and that manipulative way you have of twisting everything. Mark was simply too pliable to stand up to you. Mark reached out to me, a pleading gesture, but I instinctively recoiled. Wait, can't we discuss this? I raised my hand, halting him. No, Mark. You discuss. You rationalize. You allow them to dictate your life. However. I'm finished hearing it. Reaching for my phone, I moved towards the door. His voice, tinged with a desperation I hadn't heard before, stopped me momentarily. Wait. Where are you going? I turned back, our eyes locking for what I knew would be the final time. I'm leaving, I stated, the word echoing in the room. Susan scoffed, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. You can't simply abandon a marriage. I met her gaze, deliberately blank, allowing no flicker of emotion to betray my resolve. Watch me, I replied calmly. Then, I walked out, the click of the door sealing my decision. The divorce took 6 agonizing months to finalize. Mark tried everything he could think of. He begged, he blamed, he even accused me of being dramatic and overreacting. But my mind was made up. There was no turning back. Sarah, bless her heart, kept me informed. Apparently, everything fell apart after I left. Mark finally confronted his parents. It was a long time coming, and not the conversation they expected, that's for sure. Richard did what he always did, tried to emasculate his son. Susan cried and carried on about how I had poisoned Mark's mind. I don't know what I did, but Mark finally saw them for who they were. It changed nothing between Mark and me. I'd already made my escape. Leaving everything behind, I returned to Charleston for good. I found a small place of my own, just enough for me. It was a relief to reconnect with friends I hadn't seen in ages, familiar faces that felt like coming home. Slowly, I began to piece my life back together, each day a little brighter than the last. Then, months later, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. The text read, Mark, I see it now. I'm sorry. The words hung there on the screen, heavy and unexpected. I stared at them, the silence in my apartment amplified. For what felt like an eternity, I considered it. Then, with a deliberate swipe, I deleted the message. Because in that moment, maybe for the first time in years, I felt truly, utterly free.